The wooden latch dropped into place with a hard, final sound.
You have to let me out!
Adesuwa ran to the door so fast her shoulder struck the frame, but the old hut did not move. She pushed again, then again. Dust fell from the roof. Dry yam leaves crackled beneath her feet. Outside, she heard footsteps retreating across the courtyard, unhurried, satisfied. The footsteps of a woman who believed she had already won. "Open this door!" Adesuwa cried, pounding with both fists. "Mama Ibinabo, open the door!" No answer. Only the faint beginning of drums from the center of Ilore village. Wedding drums. Her wedding drums. A moment before, she had been standing in the morning light with her mother's coral beads in her hands, breathing carefully, telling herself to stay calm. After years of work, years of swallowing insult after insult in silence, years of carrying a house that was never allowed to feel like home, the day had finally come. Chief Kamau had sent his elders. The whole village had heard the announcement. Before sunset, Adesuwa was supposed to walk through the square, not as a servant in her own father's compound, but as a bride. Now she was locked inside the abandoned yam hut behind the kitchen. Then she heard another sound. Laughter. Not loud, not wild, just one low, pleased laugh from outside the wall. Her stepsister, Eri. Adesuwa froze. Something cold moved through her chest. She looked down at her hands. The coral beads were gone. The folded indigo bridal wrapper was gone. Even the bronze ankle bells her late mother had left for her wedding day were gone. And suddenly, before her mind could resist the truth, she saw it all. The sweetness in Mama Ibinabo's voice that morning, the way Eri had avoided her eyes, the way the older woman had said, "Come, child, your wrapper is in the back hut. I kept it safe from cooking smoke." The way the door had closed too quickly behind her. No. No! Adesuwa threw herself against the wood again so hard the wall shook. "Open this door!" Outside, the drums grew louder. The wedding procession had started. And somewhere in the center of Ilore, another woman was preparing to wear Adesuwa's beads, step into Adesuwa's place, and answer to Adesuwa's name. But Mama Ibinabo had forgotten one thing. Some crimes are planned so carefully that the guilty stop looking around. And because she stopped looking around, she did not notice the palace guard standing beyond the plantain fence. He had seen the hut door close. He had seen the bolt slide. And he had seen Adesuwa's stepsister walk away wearing a veil. The guard's name was Temba, and before that day was over, the whole village would know what he knew. The village of Ilore had not celebrated a chief's marriage in 28 years. Children who were tall enough to carry calabashes had never seen one. Young mothers had only heard about it from their grandmothers. Old men who leaned on carved walking sticks had spent the last week sitting under the udala tree, arguing about whether the drummers of today still understood ceremony the way drummers used to. But that morning, none of those arguments mattered. The market road had been swept before sunrise. Palm fronds were tied to gateposts. Women rubbed oil into their arms and wrapped themselves in bright cloth. Men stood straighter. Children were warned not to run through the procession path. Even the air itself seemed to be waiting. Chief Kamau, son of Chief Baraka, and now ruler of Ilore after his father's passing, was taking a wife, and the woman everyone had spent 6 days praising was Adesuwa. Adesuwa, daughter of the late Adewale the carver, Adesuwa, whose hands could turn plain calabash into beauty. Adesuwa, who had worked for years without noise, without boasting, without complaint. Adesuwa, who had won respect the slow way, by earning it. But the bride the village had prepared for was not on the path to the square. She was trapped in darkness, pressing both hands against a wooden door that smelled of age, mildew, and old harvest. Inside the hut, it was hot already. One narrow slit near the roof let in a blade of morning light. She looked around wildly for anything she could use: an iron hook, a loose plank, a stone heavy enough to crack the hinge. There was almost nothing. 2 broken baskets, a clay pot with a chipped mouth, ropes too frayed to help. She seized the clay pot and smashed it against the latch side of the door. The pot broke into dull pieces. The latch held. Then she stopped moving. Not because she had given up, because she heard voices near the wall. Women's voices. One was Mama Ibinabo's. The other was Eddie's. "I cannot breathe in this veil," Eddie whispered. "You can breathe well enough to become chief's wife," Mama Ibinabo said. "What if he knows?" "He will not know. He has spoken to her before. He has spoken to her twice. Men like that see what they want to see. Today he will see cloth, beads, and obedience. Keep your head down. Speak little. Smile when spoken to." "And if Adesuwa gets out?" A short silence followed. Then Mama Ibinabo answered, and her voice was like a knife wrapped in cotton. "She will not get out before the vows, and after the vows, it will not matter." Adesuwa shut her eyes. That sentence hurt more than the lock. Not because it was cruel, because it was confident. Mama Ibinabo had not acted in fear. She had acted with a plan. Before we continue, if you enjoy deep emotional African stories with powerful endings, remember to like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from today. To understand why Mama Ibinabo believed she could steal a whole future in one morning, you must understand the house she had ruled for 12 years. Adesuwa was 24 years old, but she had been carrying herself like an older woman since she was 10. That was the year her mother died during the long fever season. For 2 years after that, her father Adewale tried to keep tenderness alive in the compound. He cooked badly, oversalted soup, forgot where he had set tools, and wept only when he thought his daughter was asleep. He was a patient man with gifted hands and a tired heart, and tired hearts often mistake company for love. So when Mama Ibinabo entered their lives, she entered through the door grief had left open. She came from the river district with polished speech, expensive wrappers, and a daughter named Eri, who was only 1 year younger than Adesuwa. She knew how to laugh at the right time, how to lower her voice before elders, how to praise a man in ways that made him feel wise. Within a year, she had married Adewale. Within 2, she had begun rearranging the house. At first, the changes were small. The carved stool that had belonged to Adesuwa's mother disappeared into storage. Then the brass cooking pot. Then the red room where Adesuwa used to sleep became Eri's, because, Mama Ibinabo said, girls must learn to adjust. When Adewale protested, Mama Ibinabo smiled and cried at exactly the right moment. The kind of tears she produced were never messy. They were useful tears, tears with direction. By the time Adewale understood the shape of the woman he had brought into his home, his lungs were already weak and his body had grown too thin. He died in the Harmattan, 3 seasons after the marriage. He left behind a compound, 2 carved plots of cocoa land beyond the western ridge, a workshop full of tools, and spoken instructions heard by 3 elders. The western land was Adesuwa's, and the workshop was Adesuwa's to keep. Mama Ibinabo nodded at those words. She nodded the way a snake might nod, if snakes could nod. And after the mourning ended, she slowly behaved as if no one had heard anything. The workshop was locked. The cocoa land was leased out to men from another village. The money from that lease never passed through Adesuwa's hands. Eri began wearing new cloth. Eri began taking lessons from a mission teacher in town. Adesuwa began waking before dawn to fetch water, pound cassava, scrub cooking pots, wash wrappers, weed a yard that no longer felt like her father's. But there was one thing Mama Ibinabo could not fully take from her: her hands. Adesuwa had learned carving from watching Adewale. Not the large mask work men usually did in the workshop, but the patient, delicate art of engraving calabashes, combs, boxes, and ceremonial bowls. Her fingers were steady. Her eye for detail was frighteningly exact. She could cut a line as fine as thread and turn an ordinary gourd into something a person would pass down to grandchildren. When the palace steward needed 20 carved drinking bowls for the new yam festival, it was Adesuwa who was quietly hired. When the Women's Council needed a gift chest for a naming ceremony, it was Adesuwa who shaped the pattern. And it was at the palace courtyard, 6 months before the wedding, that Chief Kamau first truly noticed her. He did not notice her because she shouted. He did not notice her because she tried to be seen. He noticed her because she corrected a design no one else had seen was wrong. The chief's attendants had commissioned a ceremonial bowl engraved with the sign of unity between river and earth. One of the palace boys had brought it to the courtyard by mistake before the final polish was done. Kamau looked at it, frowned once, and said, "The crossing line is reversed." The steward stammered. The artisan blamed the light. Adesuwa, who had been kneeling nearby, wrapping finished spoons in cloth, looked up before she could stop herself. "It is reversed," she said quietly. The courtyard went still. Chief Kamau turned to her. "You know the symbol?" "My father taught me," she said. "What does it mean?" She hesitated, then answered. "It means strength without arrogance and union without force. If the line is reversed, it means conquest." Kamau stared at the bowl, then back at her. "And on a marriage vessel?" "It would become a curse." That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, just one careful truth spoken by one careful woman. The chief asked who had made the correction marks on the edge. The steward pointed to Adesuwa. Kamau did not smile much, but something in his expression changed. A month later, the queen aunt requested a carved keepsake box. Adesuwa made it. 2 weeks later, another commission followed, then another, and once, when she was returning from the palace with a wrapped payment tucked under her arm, Kamau met her on the path near the baobab grove. He was not dressed like a chief then. No full beads, no leopard cloth, just a dark wrapper and a plain staff. "You carved the moonlit box," he said. Adesuwa lowered her eyes. "Yes, my lord." "You hid a second pattern under the first." Her eyes lifted in surprise. "You saw it?" "I did." Most people had not. The outer pattern showed vines. Hidden inside the lines was a second story. A woman rising through hardship, carrying fire without being consumed by it. Kamau looked at her for a long moment and said, "A person who carves like that has lived with silence." Adesuwa did not answer. He did not press her. That, too, she remembered. Men who wanted to own a woman usually pressed. Men who wanted to understand often waited. When the elders later came to her compound with cola nuts and formal words, half the village acted shocked. But the truth was simpler. Kamau had asked questions. Every answer led back to the same name: Adesuwa. Mama Ibinabo received the marriage delegation with tears of joy so smooth they almost deserved applause. "My daughter," she said, placing one hand over her chest. "My beloved daughter." But when the elders were leaving, old Mama Sola from the next compound later swore she saw Mama Ibinabo grip Eri's wrist so tightly the girl winced. That should have warned someone. It did not. Back in the hut, Adesuwa stepped away from the door and forced herself to breathe. One breath, then another. Panic is loud, but survival is often quiet. She looked again at the roof slit. Too narrow. She examined the hinges, rusted but set deeply. She tried pulling at the back wall where old cane had been patched with mud. One section felt weak. She dropped to her knees and began digging at it with a broken clay shard. Her fingers bled in less than a minute. She kept going. Outside, the drums changed rhythm. The procession had advanced to the square. She could picture it without seeing it. Village women ululating, drummers circling, elders lifting staffs, Eri's face hidden under her veil, Mama Ibinabo walking close behind like a woman escorting a victory. Adesuwa pressed the shard harder into the wall until the skin near her thumb split. Mud crumbled. Not enough. She widened the hole. Dry earth filled her nails. A lizard darted out. She did not stop. Then came a voice at the far side of the hut. Low, male, urgent. "Adesuwa." She froze. "Adesuwa, are you inside?" "Temba." "Yes." She crawled toward the sound. "I am here." A pause, then relief in his voice. "Do not shout. I think they have all gone to the square." Temba was one of the palace guards, young, broad-shouldered, serious, with the alert eyes of a man who had grown up needing to notice danger before it arrived. He had once carried a box of her carvings from the palace and spoken to her kindly when others barely saw her. Now his voice came through the back wall like water to the thirsty. "They locked me in," she whispered. "I saw." Her hands tightened in the dirt. "Then help me." "I am trying." She heard him test the outer latch, then curse softly. "They have tied it with iron wire." The sound of metal scraping followed. "Temba, listen to me," she said, her voice trembling despite herself. "They took my beads. They took my wrapper. Eri is going to the square in my place." "I know." "You know?" "I saw her leave veiled. I also saw your stepmother give coins to one of the drummers and tell him to move the ceremony quickly." Adesuwa shut her eyes. So it was true in full. Temba lowered his voice even more. "I left one guard post without permission to come here. If I break this and someone sees me, I may be punished." "I am sorry," she whispered. "Do not be sorry." His answer came fast. "Listen carefully. I am going to the chief." Adesuwa's breath caught. "No." "Yes." "If you go to him and he does not believe you—" "He will." "You cannot know that." Temba was quiet for 1 second, then said, "I know he notices what others ignore." There are moments when hope hurts more than despair, because hope asks you to trust again. Adesuwa leaned her forehead against the rough wall. "And if he is already married to her before you return?" "Then I will still return." The certainty in that answer nearly made her weep. "Temba." "Yes?" "Tell him one thing." "What?" "Tell him the woman in the veil cannot answer what is carved inside the moon-lid box." A brief silence. Then Temba said, "I will tell him." She listened to his footsteps run away. Inside the square, the false brides stood beneath white cloth canopies while the village praised a lie. Eri's heart beat so wildly she thought everyone could hear it. Beneath the heavy veil, sweat rolled down her neck. The coral beads around her chest felt as if they belonged to the dead. Mama Ibinabo had told her to keep her chin lowered and speak only if absolutely necessary. But silence can also become its own kind of confession, and Eri knew it. Chief Kamau stood before the elders in dark ceremonial cloth edged with bronze. He looked every part the ruler, tall, composed, difficult to deceive. Yet even difficult men can be deceived for a few moments when tradition blocks the view. The head elder lifted his staff. "Bring the bride forward." Eri stepped once, then twice. Her ankles trembled. Kamau watched her closely. The village saw a veiled bride. He saw something wrong. It began not with the face, which the veil hid well, but with the movement. Adesuwa moved with contained care, like a woman who had learned every object could break and every word could be used against her. Eri moved like someone performing delicacy, rather than living in it. Then he noticed her hands. Too soft, too jeweled, and when the women assisting the bride adjusted the edge of her wrapper, he saw her wrist clearly. No pale crescent scar. Adesuwa had cut that scar on a carving blade at 16. He had seen it when she handed over the moon-lid box. Kamau's eyes lifted to the crowd. Mama Ibinabo smiled too quickly. That was when Temba arrived. He did not run straight into the center. He knew protocol better than that. He came fast to the chief's right flank, bent low, and spoke close enough that only Kamau and the nearest elder heard. "My lord, Adesuwa is locked in the old yam hut behind her father's kitchen. I saw the door barred. This woman is not her." The air changed. Not visibly at first, but power shifted. Kamau did not explode. Men who truly hold authority rarely need to shout immediately. He simply said, "Stop the ceremony." The drummers stopped on the third beat. 100 heads turned. The head elder blinked. "My lord?" Kamau stepped down from the mat and faced the veiled bride. "Raise your hands." Eri did not move. "Raise your hands," he repeated. Slowly she obeyed. The chief looked at her palms. Soft indeed. No callus where engraving knives rest. No fine nicks across the fingers. No traces of dark polishing oil beneath the nails. Then he asked, in a voice neither loud nor gentle, "What is carved inside the moon-lid box?" Eri's silence became a sound of its own. One long, terrible silence. At last she whispered, "Vines, my lord." Kamau stared at her. "No," he said. The word fell like a stone into water. He turned to the assembly. "This is not Adesuwa." The crowd erupted, not in full speech at first, only that rising, rough sound human beings make when they realize they have been standing inside a lie. Mama Ibinabo stepped forward immediately. "My lord, the girl is frightened. She has not slept." Kamau's gaze cut to her. "Where is Adesuwa?" "My lord, she was overwhelmed this morning. Where is Adesuwa?" His tone sharpened enough to strip away performance. Temba stepped out then. "In the old yam hut behind Adewale's compound." All eyes swung to him. Mama Ibinabo's face did not collapse, but it tightened at the mouth. Kamau did not wait for permission from the elders. He gave 3 instructions in quick succession. To the drummers, "No one leaves the square." To the women's council, Keep the bride where she stands. To the guards, bring Mama Ibinabo and her daughter under watch. Then he turned to Temba. Take me there. They moved fast through the western path, dust rising beneath sandals, villagers trailing at a distance because villages are made of ears, feet, and stories, and once truth begins to run, everyone runs after it. At the compound, Kamau saw the hut himself. The wire, the barred latch, the deliberate cruelty of it. Temba pulled a short iron tool from his belt and worked at the wire while Kamau stood still in a stillness that was more dangerous than rage. Inside, Adesuwa heard the scraping and held her breath. Then the latch snapped free. Light flooded in. She stepped back, one arm over her face. For one suspended heartbeat, no one moved. She stood framed by darkness and dust, her wrapper soiled with earth, her hands cut, her cheek streaked with dried tears and red clay. Kamau stared at her, and whatever last doubt remained in the minds of those behind him died there. It was her. Adesuwa looked at Temba first, then at Kamau, then beyond them to the path, where she could see women craning their necks and boys standing on stones, and Mama Sola already whispering, "I said it. I said something was wrong." Kamau spoke quietly. "Who did this?" Adesuwa opened her mouth, then closed it. There are injuries so fresh they resist language. Kamau stepped closer, but not too close. Adesuwa. At the sound of her own name, spoken that way, steadily, as if it still belonged to her, something inside her nearly broke. "Mama Ibinabo," she said. "She took my beads. She took my wedding wrapper. She locked me inside and sent Eri in my place." Kamau's jaw hardened, but the story was not finished. Adesuwa drew one shaking breath and added, "And the land papers, too." His eyes narrowed. "What papers?" "My father's western land. She has hidden the records for years. Last week, I heard a man from Ikena speaking with her near the fence. He called it a sale, not a lease, a sale." That changed everything. A stolen wedding was scandal. A stolen inheritance was war beneath the skin of law. Temba looked at Kamau. Kamau looked at the compound house. "Search it." Two guards moved at once. Adesuwa swayed slightly, and one of the older women from the crowd, Mama Sola, came forward with sudden authority. "Enough standing! The girl needs water!" But Adesuwa caught Kamau's sleeve before he turned away. It was the first time she had ever touched him. His body stilled. "My lord," she said, voice low, "if the village sees me like this—" He looked down at her torn wrapper, dusty feet, cut hands, then back into her eyes. "The village will see you as you are," he said. "And today, that is better than any cloth." Some sentences do not sound grand when spoken. They become grand because they are true. Within minutes, the search began yielding things Mama Ibinabo had believed hidden well enough. First, the empty coral bead box under Eddie's sleeping mat. Then, Adesuwa's bronze ankle bells wrapped in palm cloth. Then, from the locked workshop, a small oilskin bundle of documents tucked inside an old carving chest. And finally, from a basket behind the grain jars, a folded agreement bearing witness marks from a property broker in Ikena. Not a lease, a sale. The Western Cocoa Land, legally promised to Adesuwa by her father's spoken declaration and supported by witness memory, had been prepared for transfer. By sunset, If the wedding theft had succeeded, Mama Ibinabo intended to remove both daughter and land from Adesuwa's reach at once. It was not a morning crime. It was a 12-year crime, ending in one morning. When Kamau read the broker's agreement, something in his face went very still. "Bring them all to the council court," he said. Back in the square, the mood had changed from celebration to heat. Not the heat of weather, the heat of public shame. Eri stood seated now, her veil removed, eyes swollen, hands locked together so tightly her knuckles whitened. Mama Ibinabo remained upright, chin lifted, still trying to wear innocence like her best cloth. Then the square parted. Adesuwa entered. No bridal wrapper, no coral chest piece, no polished sandals, just a plain, dust-marked cloth, cut hands, and the kind of dignity suffering sometimes sharpens instead of destroys. A ripple passed through the crowd. Some women covered their mouths. Some men looked at the ground. Because now everyone could see what should have been seen earlier. One woman had been prepared, and another had been dressed for theft. The council court met that same afternoon in the long open hall near the shrine tree. Every elder came. The women's council came. The palace record keeper came. Even the broker from Ikena, who had not yet left the village, was summoned under guard. Kamau did not sit at the center first. He made the elders sit. That mattered. It showed this was not just a lover rescuing his bride. It was a ruler placing truth under law. Mama Ibinabo spoke first because liars often rush to fill silence before facts do. "My elders," she began, spreading her hands. "There has been confusion. Adesuwa became afraid. She hid herself. The younger girl was only trying to prevent disgrace." "Stop," said Elder Bako. He was the oldest man in Elore, thin as a carved pole and twice as hard. "Do not decorate rot." A murmur moved through the room. The record keeper was called. He was a bent man named Jengo, whose eyes watered constantly, but whose memory remained sharp enough to cut rope. He examined the oilskin documents and asked for more light. When it came, he laid two papers side by side. "This mark," he said, tapping one corner, "is Adewale's sign." He tapped the other. "This copy has been retraced." He pointed again. "And this portion, naming temporary farm use, has been altered into transfer language." Mama Ibinabo tried to interrupt. "Old eyes can mistake." "Not these old eyes," Jengo replied. Then the broker from Ikena was questioned. He sweated through every answer. Under pressure, he admitted he had been promised full sale of the western cocoa land after the wedding was completed and after the household dispute settled itself. The phrase made the room colder. "What household dispute?" asked Elder Bako. The broker hesitated. Kamau's voice entered then, calm and exact. "Say it." The man swallowed. "She told me the older daughter would soon be in no position to claim anything." No one breathed for a moment. At last, Elder Bako turned toward Mama Ibinabo. "Did you say these words?" She did not answer directly. People who have lived by manipulation seldom answer directly when plain truth arrives. Instead, she said, "A widow must secure her child's future." Then Adesuwa spoke. Until then, she had sat with both hands folded in her lap, gaze lowered, looking less like a future chief's wife than like a woman deciding whether speech was worth the cost. When she rose, the room listened. "My father loved this woman," she said. "Not my stepmother." This woman. The distance mattered. He brought her into our home when grief had made him lonely. After he died, she took the workshop key, leased my land, sold what was my mother's, and told me silence was respect. I was young, so I believed silence was the only way to survive in that house. She lifted her cut hands. This morning she took my beads, took my wrapper, locked me inside the old yam hut, and sent Eri in my place. If Temba had not seen, I would still be there while she sold my father's land before the day ended. No tears came now. That made her voice stronger. I am not asking for pity, she said. I am asking that what is mine be named mine, and what was done be named what it was. Then she sat. No performance, no excess, only truth. That is often why truth wins. Lies require decoration. Truth can stand bare. Mama Ibinabo saw the room slipping away from her and changed strategy. Some guilty people defend themselves until defense fails. Then they reach for sacrifice. She turned suddenly toward Eri. It was for you, she snapped. Everything I did was for you. Eri's face crumpled at last. The girl had been frightened all day, but fear and shame are not the same thing. Shame finally took her. She stood so abruptly her stool scraped back. No, she said. The word came out small, then stronger. No. All eyes turned to her. Mama Ibinabo stared as if she had been struck. Eri's voice shook. I did not want this marriage. I did not want her beads. I did not want her place. Tears spilled now, uncontrolled, ugly, real. You said if I refused, you would send me away with nothing. You said a girl who rejects fortune is a fool. You said once I entered the chief's house, no one could undo it. Mama Ibinabo hissed, Be quiet! But Eri had crossed the point where obedience lives. She begged at the hut door, Eri said. I heard her. I heard her pounding. A sound moved through the women in the room. Not loud, angry. The kind of anger women make when they hear another woman has been humiliated in a way they can imagine too well. Mama Ibinabo turned back toward the elders, but her face had changed. The graceful control was gone. Underneath it was something harder, meaner, thinner. You all speak now as if life is simple, she said, as if fairness feeds a daughter, as if love protects a widow. Adewale died and left scraps. I took what I had to take. You took what was not yours, Kamau said. She laughed once bitterly. And what is ownership, my lord? The strong keep, the weak lose. Kamau looked at her for a long moment. That sentence, he said, is the one that convicts you most. He stood. In a hall full of elders, his authority did not come from volume. It came from alignment. Fact, witness, document, and conduct had all now moved in one direction. The court has heard, he said. Adesuwa was unlawfully confined. Her bridal items were stolen. Another woman was presented under false identity at a public ceremony. Her father's land records were altered. A private sale was arranged to strip her of inheritance. This was not confusion. It was design. He turned to Elder Bako. Let the council rule. And the council did. The ruling took time because good judgment should never sound rushed. The elders conferred. The Women's Council gave testimony on household conduct. Jengo confirmed the document tampering in detail. The broker's agreement was taken as evidence. Temba testified to what he saw: the locking of the hut, the veiled departure, the urgency. At last, Elder Bako rose. The western cocoa land belongs to Adesuwa, daughter of Adewale. The attempted sale is void. All lease records from the past 12 years are to be examined. Profits wrongfully taken are to be counted and restored in whatever amount remains possible. The workshop and its tools are Adesuwa's by witness memory and community recognition. As for Mama Ibinabo, she will stand under village penalty for false confinement, inheritance fraud, and public deception. Her authority in that compound ends today. He then turned to Eri. The room waited. Because you submitted to deception, he said, your name is stained by it. But because evidence shows coercion, and because you spoke truth before the court, you will not bear your mother's full punishment. You will choose your own path, outside her control. Eri broke into quiet sobs. Mama Ibinabo did not cry. Some people are too proud to cry when they lose. They prefer to look like stone. But stone can also be carried away and set aside. Then something happened no one expected. Queen Mother Nala, the chief's aunt and the oldest living woman of the royal household, rose from the back bench where she had watched everything in silence. She walked slowly to Adesuwa, carrying a folded bundle wrapped in white cloth. When she opened it, a breath moved through the hall. Inside lay a ceremonial bridal wrapper of indigo and gold, old and magnificent, embroidered at the edge with river symbols and bronze suns. "It belonged to my mother," Queen Mother Nala said. "It was worn by a woman who entered this house with honor. Today, honor was delayed, not destroyed." She held the wrapper out. "Take it." Adesuwa stared at the cloth as if she did not fully trust the world yet. Nala stepped closer. "Child," she said softly, "take it." When Adesuwa reached for it, her hands trembled, not because the cloth was heavy, because kindness after humiliation often feels heavier than cruelty. Cruelty you can prepare for. Kindness catches you unguarded. The Queen Mother herself wrapped the cloth around Adesuwa in front of the whole court. Women who had watched in anger now watched in tears. By the time the coral beads were returned from the evidence mat and laid again across Adesuwa's chest, the room no longer looked like a court. It looked like correction made visible. The marriage did not happen that afternoon, and that was wise. Some wounds must be cleaned before joy can stand beside them. Instead, Kamau asked Adesuwa one question in private beneath the shade of the inner courtyard. "No one will force this now," he said. "After what happened today, if you wish to wait, we wait. If you wish to walk away from this entirely, you may." That question told her more about the man than any public rescue had. Power that asks is safer than power that assumes. Adesuwa looked at him for a long time. In the courtyard beyond, women were washing the dust from her ankle bells. Somewhere farther off, the village still buzzed with the story that would not sleep for years. "I do not wish to walk away," she said at last, "but I do not want today remembered as the day I was stolen from and then hurried into smiling." Kamau nodded once. Then how should it be remembered? She thought about the hut, the wire, Temba's voice through the wall, Eri's tears, the Queen Mother's hands, the hall full of witnesses. "As the day truth arrived before ceremony," she said. Kamau's face changed then, only slightly, but enough. "That is how I will remember it too." So the wedding was moved, not by months, by 3 days. 3 days in which the village was made to sit with what had happened. 3 days in which the western land boundary was walked publicly and marked again under elder supervision. 3 days in which Adesuwa opened her father's workshop for the first time in 12 years and stood in the doorway breathing dust, cedar, old oil, and memory. She cried there, only there. Not in court, not in the square, not in front of Mama Ibinabo. Some grief belongs with tools, old wood, and the absent dead. Temba helped clear the room. He repaired a table leg. He fetched water without being asked. When Adesuwa thanked him, he looked almost embarrassed. "I only did what was right," he said. "That is never only," she answered. By the second day, the village had fully chosen its version of events, and villages always choose hard. Some women who once praised Mama Ibinabo now claimed they had always known she was dangerous. Men who had ignored Adesuwa's years of labor now spoke of her as if they had been defending her in secret all along. This is also part of village truth. People often run toward justice once justice is winning. Adesuwa noticed. She remembered. But she did not spend herself correcting every hypocrisy. Survival had already cost her enough. On the third day, she entered the marriage courtyard again. This time there was no veil hiding another face, no stolen cloth, no fraud waiting in the aisle. She wore Queen Mother Nala's wrapper, her restored coral beads, and one carved bracelet she had made herself from Iroko wood the night before. Kamau wore dark bronze and deep green. Temba stood at the outer gate as one of the honored guards. Jengo, the record keeper, was seated near the elders like a man whose memory had been publicly vindicated and was enjoying it quietly. When Adesuwa walked the path, the village rose, not because she was becoming chief's wife, because she had already become something harder to ignore than rank. She had become a woman the whole village had watched survive theft and still stand upright. The marriage was solemnized under open sky. No rushing, no trick. When the final blessing was spoken, Kamau leaned close enough for only her to hear and said, "No door will close on you unseen again." If there are sentences a woman remembers when she is 80, that was one of them. Months passed, then a year, then another, and Ilore became, in small ways, a different place. The western cocoa land was restored properly, with accounts reviewed and a portion of recovered profits placed under Adesuwa's authority. She did not hoard it. That would have been another kind of fear, ruling from a different chair. Instead, she hired women from struggling compounds, paid fair wages, and opened a small carving and craft house beside her father's workshop, where girls could learn engraving, dye design, bead setting, and ledger keeping. "Why ledger keeping?" one elder asked her with amusement. "So no one can steal from them with paper while they are busy making beauty," she answered. That answer spread through Ilore almost as fast as the wedding scandal had. Eri did not remain in her mother's shadow. With the court's permission and small support from Queen Mother Nala, she left for the river district and apprenticed with cloth traders. She wrote once to Adesuwa, then again. The first letter apologized badly. The second apologized honestly. Adesuwa did not answer at once. Forgiveness is not a race. But she kept both letters wrapped in cloth rather than burning them, and that, too, was a beginning. As for Mama Ibinabo, judgment did not turn her into a new woman. Some stories lie and pretend public disgrace transforms everyone. Life is usually slower and less poetic than that. She left Ilore diminished, angry, and no longer able to command any room with those useful tears of hers. She moved south to a cousin's compound where, people said, she learned what it means when charm stops working before strangers. That was consequence enough. Temba rose in the guard ranks. Kamau trusted him more after that day, and not merely for loyalty. Loyalty is valuable, but the courage to interrupt ceremony with truth is rarer. And Adesuwa? Adesuwa changed too, though not in the obvious fairy tale way people like to tell. She did not wake one day with all pain gone. She did not forget the sound of the latch falling. She did not stop sometimes checking a doorway twice before stepping through it. But fear was no longer the roof over her life. One rainy evening, nearly 2 years after the stolen wedding day, she stood in the doorway of the carving house, watching 7 girls bent over bowls and combs, tongues pressed to the corners of their mouths in concentration. Rain struck the courtyard in silver lines. The smell of wet earth rose thick and alive. Inside, one of the youngest girls spoiled a pattern and burst into tears. Adesuwa crossed the room, took the bowl gently, and turned it in the light. "It can be remade," she said. The child sniffed. "It is ruined." Adesuwa smiled, not mockingly, but with knowledge. "No, it is only interrupted." That is a sentence some stories are built to earn. Later that same night, after the girls had gone and the lamps were low, Kamau found her sitting at the work table, turning one of her mother's old coral beads between finger and thumb. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She looked toward the rain-dark yard. "That one morning was supposed to end me." And it did not. "No," she said. "It introduced me to myself." He stood behind her chair, one hand resting lightly on the back. "And who did it introduce?" She considered the question. "A woman who should have spoken sooner," she said. "But perhaps I could not have spoken sooner. Perhaps some truths need witnesses before they can cross the mouth." Kamau nodded. "And now?" "Now I will never confuse silence with peace again." Outside, thunder rolled beyond the ridge. Inside, the lamp flame leaned and steadied. That is how lives change most often. Not all at once, not with music always playing, but in the slow replacement of old rules with better ones. In Ilore, people told the story for years. Children who had not yet been born when the false bride stood in the square would later hear how one woman was locked away, how one guard saw, how one chief stopped the drums, how one village was forced to watch truth walk back into the center of ceremony, wearing dust instead of silk. And every version of the story that was worth hearing ended the same way. They tried to shut her out of her own future, but they forgot. The future has eyes. And sometimes, all it takes is one witness, one question, one opened door, and one woman willing at last to say, "Name what was done." That was enough. That was everything. And that is the end of tonight's story. If you enjoyed this powerful African story, subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. And tell us in the comments, at what moment did you know Mama Ibinabo had already lost?